Hello and welcome to another episode of the American Soccer Analysis Show. I almost said not that name. I am your host, Kieran. MLS Cup came and went. The season is over, and I am joined by Benjamin Bellman and Harrison Crow to wrap up the MLS Cup and preview the expansion draft, which, if you are listening to this, the expansion draft is tonight. This episode is going to be out very shortly before. We're going to talk about players to pick. Ben Harrison, did you enjoy MLS Cup?
I feel like that happened like a week ago,
I
like
know.
almost 2 weeks ago,
I
like right?
know.
Like it
So
just,
much has happened since that I'm like, oh yeah, that what we still have to cover that. But yeah, it was fun. I think the first half was great. Second half was more stale than I was hoping for, but I think overall it was really good.
I feel
I
like
th-
forgive me. I feel like we're kind of spoiled with like the last few years, probably the last 4 years, just being absolute fire games. They've just been so good. Like really, they've been so good.
I mean, I can't remember the last like bad MLS Cup, to be honest with you. Like I'm pretty hard pressed to think about any of
I
the
I
season
think I
ones.
think Toronto and Seattle, the first matchup was bad.
So at least
I mean,
2016, and then you can debate it since then.
That's
I
a
mean,
good.
like, I understand, like, it was 14 degrees there, like, it was bitterly cold. Like, I think it was interesting for, like, yourself, for me, like, for the narratives that we held. But outside of that, I think that like, it had some supremely, like, great moments. But aside from that, like, I think it
I,
was a boring game.
you know what? Like, actually, if you go back through the last few, I would say the worst one was 2020, the Crew Sounders 3-0.
Yeah,
That's
that was
probably the
pretty bad.
last bad one. But like
That was,
Galaxy
hmm
Red Bulls was good. Crew LAFC was good. LAFC Philadelphia is maybe the best MLS Cup final of all time.
Yep.
yep.
NYC Portland, which went to a shootout, wasn't great, but shootouts are always good.
It wasn't bad. It was below average. I'll definitely, yeah.
And then yeah, Crew Sounders 3-0. And then yeah, before that, probably the 0-0 one. I think the TFC 2-0 game was pretty good actually.
No, I thought it
That
was a
was a
great
decent game. That was a
game.
decent game.
Anyways, this was, in my opinion, a certified banger. I was lucky enough to go. Thank you, MLSPR. And the atmosphere in the stadium, and we are a stats podcast, we don't talk about atmosphere that often. The atmosphere in the stadium was legitimately one of the best stadium atmospheres I have ever been a part of anywhere in the world at any level. The pop on the first goal was insane. The Galaxy crowd were very loud the whole game, and the Red Bull brought 3,000 fans, which was awesome. Like, what's it called now? Dignity Health Sports Park, Home Depot Center, is not that big a venue. It's very close to the field, so they were loud and they were very strategic. They never tried to fight with the Galaxy fans in terms of cheering, but if ever there was a lull, you got big Red Bull chants, which was pretty cool. Uh, in terms of the game, I think the place to start, and this was like the place that we talked about before the game, was who's going to play instead of Ricky Pooge. And this was the place that everybody in the post-match press conferences asked was, were you surprised that Greg Vanney chose to start Gaston Brugman over Marco Royce? We had talked about on the pod that we thought Brugman would start. That was your spot, Harrison. Am I correct?
I think I threw out the name. I think we had kind of talked about Royce being, it would be smarter to, if Royce wasn't injured or was injured, that it'd be smarter to start him early on. Which, you kind of have to question whether or not that would have been, uh, an avenue, how that would have changed the game and how that would have changed. But yeah, like it was crazy that Rujman came in and did the stuff that he did. Like he was just absolutely got inserted and was an instant difference maker with his passing. And that's no surprise to us. I mean, that's somebody that I feel like for the most part we've kind of forgotten about. I feel like overall over the course of the season we haven't mentioned him as much, especially in the years past, how much I feel like we kind of tooted that train, right?
Yeah, and I think like the thing with Brugman this year is he just didn't play that much because he was always hurt. Like he only played 1,200 league minutes this year.
Right.
Uh, but I think yeah, you're spot on that we were not at all surprised to see his ability to pass, but also his ability defensively.
Hmm.
Uh, Before the game, I ran into Joe Lowry, who was like, "What do you think of this like terror ball, this suffer ball lineup from Greg Vanney?" And I said, "Well, I'm not shocked because like it's a final and like you're playing a super direct team. Like it's really gonna be all about the second balls for you. And Brugman, I think, is better than perhaps the perception was this year because he didn't play that much. But really, like that's where the second goal comes from is Marky Delgado scoops the second ball and they just zoom away. And Brugman had Peter Stroud in the torture chamber the whole game. That guy had no idea where Brugman was at any point. Ben, was that kind of the performance you were expecting from the Galaxy with that lineup, or did you expect them to maybe be a little bit more conservative with those three? Like, really, it's three defensive midfielders in
Hmm.
Delgado, Brugman, and Cerrillo.
I mean, I don't think they expected them to be conservative. I think it was more like the opening fireworks were more of the Red Bull sort of just being phased. Like, I think it might be that they were phased by their last minute switch. Like, I think that might have mentally thrown them off to the point where they let the gaps happen, and the Galaxy, no matter who they have on the field, have the skill to exploit that. Brookman has always been like the past couple of seasons before they really turned it on this year, with all of the new roster additions from Will Kuntz. He's been one of the stalwarts of this team. When good things are happening, I mean, Pooch is probably a part of it, but Brookman's also a part of it before 2024. So I'm not surprised there. Um, I think part of what I was so shocked was for me, I thought the Red Bulls, I think I said this at the pod, I think the Red Bulls had to score first and fast. Like that was the game plan for me if I was Sandro Schwartz going in. And the extreme opposite happened. Like they were not after the ball. They were not trying to be active in the game to get the game state advantage, and then they fell behind. And so that sort of turned into what we didn't expect. Everyone knows that the Galaxy have been a possession team, but the Red Bulls were not a possession team. And because of game states and because of scores, that was the story, is the Red Bulls trying to break down, the bad offense trying to break down the bad defense. And I think that's part of why it wasn't like it was certainly chaotic and it was certainly entertaining, but it wasn't that sort of quality chess match that you would have been hoping for. If like, hey, Red Bulls got that 1-0 victory. Oh, Galaxy made it 1-1 in the 60th minute. How does it go from there? I think that would have been more tense. But I mean, the Galaxy did what they had to do. They made the game theirs and they took the reward for that.
The Andres Reyes late swap is a big one, I think. Andres Reyes pulled out after the warm up. He said he wasn't feeling well. We didn't get any more detail than that in the press conference. And crucially, once the Red Bull didn't make the swap until maybe 15, 20 minutes in, where they swapped Noah Isle to play left center back and the Neil I to the other two center back spots. And I was actually talking to behind the scenes ASA man Tyler Richardet. I don't know if I'm going to say it the French Canadian way. But Tyler was saying that the Red Bull haven't, when they have played with that back three, they have always played it with Isle on the left, not not in Andres Reyes' spot. And Sandra Schwartz said it was about kind of like getting him there to play vertical passes into the half spaces from there. And I don't know how much like that I vibed with from the game I watched. But I think your point about the Red Bull having to try and seize game state is really valuable because there's an old Pochettino quote of like they were playing somebody like a weaker Premier League team when he coached Spurs and they went to press and this team just kicked long balls over their head the whole game and they stopped pressing and he's like, well, why am I going to press if they're going to kick it over our head? And that was very much the first 15 minutes of this game was the Red Bull went to press and the Galaxy were like, nope, long ball, long ball, collect seconds, attack off of that. And I think that really like jangled the game up. And then when you score two goals, now it's just like it's curtains. It's very, very difficult.
I
And
don't
this
even
is
think
a
it was just I don't even think it was just the long balls either. There was some surprising dribble progressions by both Gabriel Peck as well as Paintsill that just absolutely exposed those fullbacks.
Let alone Jovic too, just going up the
Yeah.
gut for his goal.
Yeah, for
yeah,
his goal, which was
that the
honestly kind
Peter
of
Shroud in
embarrassing.
no man's land. No
Yeah.
man's land.
So I mean, it was good, but it at the same time, I feel like the Red Bulls were scrambling almost from the start. Like no, I don't feel like there was any person that lived up to what they had done previously in any of the MLS playoffs that we had seen. I mean, like I think one of the big things is number one, you gave the shout out. At some point, Daniel Edelman, right? Edelman, I felt was just completely
He
transparent.
had a brutal game.
Yeah,
Brutal game.
Cameron Harper had had a great playoff, really quietly had a great playoff, and just kept getting absolutely exposed down that flank side by Paintsill. It just
Well, and
like
the big one that you flagged up during the game, Carlos Coronel has been probably the best goalkeeper throughout the entire playoffs. And like, not that, look, at the end of the day, the game is an exact 2-1. It's 2.01 to 0.95 by our model, 1.96 G plus to 1.00 G plus. Like, it is a perfect encapsulation of a 2-1 game. And Coronel made some great saves in the second half, no doubt.
absolutely.
But you come away from those the first two shots of the game, you come away from those two chances and you're like, well, you probably want one of them back. You probably want one, like on the balance of probabilities, you should probably stop one. And if it's the first one, you definitely feel a lot better. And that I think was a big one. Another one, Forsberg. Forsberg was woeful, like
Yep.
genuine. Forsberg was so bad to the point that the conversation of every single reporter walking to the press conference after the game was, "Oh my God, I can't believe how bad he is." John Mueller was hitting Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani dingers all game, saying he's ghosted this game harder than he's ghosted his family. It was ruthless and it was accurate. He was horrific.
Hmm.
The Red Bulls chasing the game, kick long balls into the box, get a perfect knockdown to him on the penalty spot, and it goes through his legs. He had a very, very poor game, I thought. John Tolkien was another one who had again, all you can go through the whole Red Bull team, and I thought they had a brutal, brutal game. And still loads of chances to equalize. Not
Hmm.
amazing chances, but chances.
Hmm.
Maybe a
Well, they especially at the end of the game, they had one specific chance, and I can't think of who it was. Maybe it was Corey Burke, or it was Forsberg. The ball went through Forsberg's
yeah,
legs.
yeah, and then it fell to somebody else for a good shot, and it gets saved. It gets like blocked on the line.
But still, I mean, that's like, oh, come on, man. That's those types of opportunities. That's what I mean when you're talking about in game. Like, yeah, we can go ahead and we can talk about how you do, principles of play, how you develop your possession, how you counter that possession, how you deal with, the pressure that they're going to be establishing in parts of the field. We can talk about it, dude. If you let the ball go through your legs while you're in the box when you're trying to create chances, holy smokes, like. Sorry, those are the moments that you're gonna highlight and be like, I want that one back.
I think one of the most interesting things that stood out for me from the post-match press conferences, and if I remember, I'll splice in the actual audio here. But Greg Vanney talked about uh, without Pooj knowing that they're not going to be able to kind of dominate the ball the same way. So they chose to play in a way that was like, we're going to leave three guys high all the time, and you're going to defend with three guys, and let's see how that goes. And funnily enough, none of the goals come from that. But that was the whole story of the second half was like Paintsel, Peck, Joveljic, crazy transitions against the back three. And like I thought Noah Isle was excellent. I thought he was the only Red Bull that was very, very good. And
Surprisingly.
I
Yeah,
like
he
him.
was he was
I
iffy
think
at the
he's quite good.
beginning, but no, he
No,
got it
once he
together by
yeah,
the
once
end.
he moved to the left, I thought he was quite good. But even like Nealis against Paintsill, who like in the first half was like, oh my God, this is not gonna go well. But in the second half, I thought he handled it okay. It was very interesting to see a team lean into like this is two separate phases now. We are gonna transition and we're gonna defend, and that's it. Have fun.
And
Uh,
I don't say surprisingly to dunk on the guy. Like finding out like you're gonna start 15 minutes before like
hard.
like that is tough.
So
So
I
like if you
wonder.
struggle to start the game, totally fair. Totally fair. Find your footing, find it quick, and to have a great second half like he did. You're right. Absolutely great call out there.
So I wonder if Reyes was a doubt, like he hadn't been feeling well all day and they knew it was a chance, or if it was like he went through the warm up and was cooked because it was quite hot on the day. And I wonder like was it a last minute thing or did they know like Sandra Schwartz didn't say anything. He just said he wasn't feeling well, so he said he couldn't go. But I wonder if it was like Royce where it was like let's see how the warm like see how you feel on the day. Um,
That's
I'm
crazy. We
curious
haven't
about
heard
that.
more about that, right?
I think the focus has been so much on the Galaxy because the Galaxy were the favorite and all the storylines around Ricky Pooge, who was jumping in like ice bins and wheeling around and looked like a man who had a perfectly functional ACL in the locker room afterwards. Uh, I think the focus was so much there that like the Red Bull stuff was whatever. There were like four people at the Red Bull press conference, and I think nobody went to their locker room.
Well, I think it's like, I don't even how can you pin it on that? I think
No,
it's just
no,
like
no.
there were
No,
so
I don't.
many other failures that it just
I
makes it so
just
less interesting. Like, well, okay, so you put Reyes in. I don't know if
I
it
do
really
think
changes much.
one of the pro Red Bull things that I do want to flag up, and Wilcoon said this in his he didn't do a post match presser, but people talked to him the next day, and the Red Bull like were very vocal about this. They started five homegrowns, five like kids from New Jersey in the final,
Mhm.
which is sick. Like
Yeah, it's
that's
awesome.
that's or maybe four. No, yeah, five. Harper, Edelman, Stroud, and then Eli.
Neelis, good Eli.
So I mean, good for you. Like that's really pretty sweet for them. I do want to kind of move us to thinking about the future, though. Uh, the last things I'll say about the game. I spoke to Marky Delgado and Eric Zavaleta in the locker room afterwards, the Toronto boys, um, and Marky was like pretty effusive with praise for all the guys that he played with. But I asked him like, does it mean more to win it for LA, given you're from LA? And he went into this like really emotional rant about watching the Galaxy play at the Home Depot Center and Chivas USA. And Toronto is a huge part of his life, and he always has love for Toronto and everything he did there. But like just riding the bus to the stadium today, he was emotional. And then when they won, he like collapses on the field crying in tears. And apparently he picked up a pretty gnarly shoulder injury. So the trainers all came over thinking he was hurt. And he was like, no, I'm just crying. And that was really cool to hear. Um, and he was pretty emotional to answer that question, which was kind of cool. And then the other one was Eric Zavaleta, who like didn't play this year, is Greg Vanny's nephew. Like there's lots of storylines there. But I just asked him like in Toronto you were a starter and now you don't play. Like how is that experience for you? And he's like, well, he's like, I know I'm at the end of my career and I know I'm not that good anymore. And Jalen Neal is sick and Emmy Garces is sick. If I can give them like love and knowledge and help them through it, it's a win for me. So I thought that was like a very self-aware answer from him. But that was pretty cool. Facing forward, though, I think there's like really interesting conversations to have about these two teams. Like the Galaxy are stupid good. All their best guys are under 25. Like Jovic, Paintsill, Peck, Puig are all under 25. Gaston Bergman was left unprotected today. He's a little bit older, but Marky Delgado is there. Emmy Garces is young. The fullbacks are young. Like they're not, this team is not aging out. They play a very sustainable style. They have a solid coach. Maybe they need to add some depth pieces to to cope with CCL and all that sort of thing. But it just like 1,000 foot view, Harrison, like, are they going to be an MLS Cup favorite next year?
I mean, from an attacking perspective, I think regardless of if they get you talked about, Ricky not necessarily looking like a guy that had tore his ACL, jumping in and out and stuff. Fun narrative, what happens if they get him back later on in the season? Maybe that, attack gets turned up, but realistically, over that entire season, if they want a good seed, they're going to have to do something on the defensive end, and that'll be really interesting to see how they kind of reorchestrate that back end and that defense. Obviously they have a solid goalkeeper in John McCarthy, but they need some help. Gaston Brugman is kind of an interesting case because you do kind of have to wonder he's only on 1.2 mil, so you kind of wonder he's cheap enough in the construct of he's an impact player. Maybe San Diego grabs him. Um, that's usually not the mechanic to do that. I kind of think they'll shy away from anything. I think you're looking at $1 million less in terms of what you're generally looking at. I think he's probably pretty safe. And if that's the case, both him and Fagundes and Marco Royce are going to be more than capable to fill in that spot for however they want to kind of circle around for Ricky Puig. So I don't think they're obviously you're going to miss Ricky Puig. You're going to miss the value he brings. It's all going to be on that defensive back end.
Ben, with Will Kuntz and like the absolute recruitment heater he has been on, are you seeing this team as MLS Cup contender next year?
Yeah, I think you have to. I mean, I don't think there's enough changes. I think there's going to be I think there's enough reason to think that Kuntz can make the adjustments as needed. Like, oh, you lose Brugman, who are the replacements going to be? I think one thing that makes me excited, additionally to this year, but going forward, is Wilkins talking about the Red Bulls and how he wants to double down on the LA Galaxy Academy itself. So I think that's like the biggest thing to look forward to. Like when I look at the current roster, like I see someone who recognizes that MLS has been a significant source of talent for MLS over the past 5 years. With the targets he got that weren't the big name international sightings, he got those reliable contributors across the roster and, did the gymnastics, to make Diego Fagundes, who's started most of the years he's been in this league, into a super sub type of role. Like, I
Fun
think, yeah, that like
Fun
he's,
Fagundes, he
yeah.
wins MLS Cup 10 years to the day
Hmm.
that he loses MLS Cup with the Revolution
In the
against the
same
Galaxy
stadium.
in the same stadium,
Yeah.
which was a very cool storyline.
Hmm. So, I mean, I think like, that shows you that, how much time like that. I think that's the ultimate stain on the record of the Galaxy administration since Bruce left and since Wilkins came in, is how much talent was squandered. Like, sure, you biffed a lot of big signings, but big signings get biffed from time to time. Yeah, you biffed a lot of them, but whatever. You are Los Angeles and you made absolutely no effort to bring talented kids through your system and into your first team. That's just simply unacceptable.
On the Red Bull side, uh, I think the path for them forward is perhaps a little bit clearer. And I wonder if getting all the way to a final and falling short is incentive for Red Bull Global to spend in the way they probably need to do to add top end talent. As poor as Forsberg was in the final, they were a much better team when he played. Um, and I think he gave them a lot. And I wonder if the final is the sugar cube that pushes them to spend and to add to their roster. We saw if you look at their expansion list, a lot of their top end talent is like, yeah, we don't care if you leave Dante Van Zier, Elias Manuel, we don't care. Uh, or if it's, well, we were good enough to make the final recruiting this way, we're fine to go from there. But that's another question for another day. Sandro Schwartz kind of ended his press conference like, for now, we'll fix all this stuff in the future, but for now, I'm gonna go for a drink with my players because as much as it sucks today, like it was a successful year for us to achieve this and to get this far, which I think is a refreshing amount of truth because it is. It's hard. It's a long MLS season. It's very, very difficult to get to MLS Cup. They had a tremendous playoff run. It was very fun. I had a lot of fun watching them. Um, and I think they're in a largely good place. That Doncor kid is nasty. He came on and totally changed the last 30 minutes of the game for them. Super, super fun to watch. Anyways, that's it from MLS Cup from us. Shifting gears to the expansion draft. On the expansion draft front, Ben, you messaged me about this earlier. This seems like a very strong expansion draft list, does it not?
It does. I'm starting to I've actually started to look at some of the numbers underlying these names, and I'm starting to think that maybe these are names that we're used to seeing, but maybe haven't been so strong this year. Because I did a little calculations for our ASA stat awards coming up at the end here. But using that, just like picking these names from this list, a lot of the contributors that we were seeing consistent throughout the year weren't necessarily consistent about it. They had more games on, usually they have more games that they were below average in G plus than above average. However, I think they're like useful players that have experience that can contribute in an expansion type of setting. And I think that's what makes this a little more interesting for me because you can pluck them out of whatever context they've been in and see if you can get them back to, what they made their name based on. So, there's a lot of high-end talent, a lot of high-paid talent. Maybe this is teams hedging that San Diego won't want to pick up big cap hits or big fees or, restrict the types of larger moves that they would want to make down the line, so they won't pick those players. But like you said, with Red Bull, sure, pick Vanzier, pick Manuel. There's a different caliber of player that you're not used to seeing on these lists.
There is certainly a lot of salary on the list. And it's got to be one of the first times that we have multiple all-stars unprotected, which I thought was particularly of interest. Uh, Harrison, you didn't seem to feel as strongly that it was as talented as a expansion draft class as Ben and I did. Explain yourself.
I think I see a lot of names that yeah they look really good. There's a lot of really fun names that are out there, like Johnny Russell, right? Johnny Russell's exposed. Well, Johnny Russell's also out of contract, right?
Isn't he
There
isn't he officially retired now?
is he officially retired?
I think
Uh,
so.
Yeah, and you'll see those retireds and out of contract people on here a
yeah,
lot.
There's a star winger could
here it is.
transform
I've been waiting for it. I've
trans
been waiting for your
listen,
pitch.
transform a franchise. You can capture the Italian American community in San Diego. Listen, he captained Napoli Serie A title. Okay, one of the best. He is Maradona incarnate. Lorenzo Insigne, for the low, low price of $0, only have to pay him $15 million a year. Only, only. Doesn't fight with his coaches or anything like that. Lorenzo Insigne available. I don't know,
I mean,
man.
that's exactly where I was gonna go with it. Like Insigne, yeah, it sounds really good exposing him. It's GMs just at this point becoming really aware of what this mechanism is for, and the mechanism itself is for teams to get low budget backups, essentially, some
Th-
roster
This
depth
this is the
that's
thing.
affordable.
This is the thing is that ultimately the expansion draft has either been who can we get that another team wants, or who can we get that's cheap and will fill our squad,
Yep.
because these teams want to pick their own big guys.
Yeah.
At the same time, there is legitimate value here. Ben, you had a few guys who stands out to you from this list of guys that is like I would pick them. Like for example, I was looking back at when we talked about the St. Louis one, Jackson Reagan was available and didn't get picked. Like we had a big debate, Harrison. I don't know if you remember this. Me, you, and Ian had a
Yeah.
big debate about do you take Stephen Cleveland or Jackson Reagan was like the real conversation. and the three of us ended up going with Jackson Reagan, and then St. Louis picked neither of them. So, I
That
mean,
that
there's
still blows my mind. There had to be some sort of deal at some point that I'm forgetting about, and
I
somebody's
don't
gonna
think so.
tweet at me, or they're
There
gonna
there
send me
are
a ski.
there are I believe the only team who has made like a handshake deal is Columbus, who gave them
Yes.
a below market
Well,
international.
that's assuming there's no deal with LAFC, right? For
Yeah, for Thomas
on
Sandhell, maybe
yeah.
on that front, but the Columbus one is a below market rate international
Oh, for
spot.
sure. Well, and that's easy to tell at this point in time, right?
And while Ben pulls up his list, like the two guys from Columbus who really stood out to me were DeJuan Jones and Andres Herrera, who are like very
Yeah.
useful attacking fullbacks, but both are on like real money. I think both are on like low TAM. That I think is like one of those where we get away with protecting or not protecting DeJuan Jones, but we make the trade and they take 100K. Ben, who popped for you?
So, I mean, I'm just going through this and I'm not so strong necessarily on anyone now that I'm like looking at real numbers. One name that popped for me before was Matt Crooks. One that originally popped for me was Maxu. I'm now seeing Bogarts reporting that he has interest from Saudi Arabia. I'm not so sure that that's going to happen, but he's
So
one where if I were San Diego, I'd be like, okay, he's a competent defender who has real pedigree in Europe, winning trophies and just give him a new home. Things maybe wasn't a great fit at Colorado, but I think it could work out. But it sounds like he wants to go to Saudi Arabia.
if I was a real sicko, I would take Maxo and then just take the gam for selling him.
Absolutely. I was
That would
waiting
be
for
my
you to say
real
that.
sicko
That
move.
would be pretty sicko move. I do approve of that. Well, I mean, I feel like you said it. Like the real way to get value here is to look for the deals, and I'm like, I don't have the time to look through all the contracts and see what the numbers are. Or you see what the other teams want. Like who on this list, if you could have them for the low price of an international spot, because that's what you've got to bargain with, and that's what we're gonna. So something like that. Like get the you know be grease the wheels for another team to poach someone. I think the Rapids were very involved with that with the Cincinnati, expansion. Like totally fleeced Cincinnati multiple times during that
Oh yeah.
expansion draft. So
So a name that popped for me that I think when I saw it, I was like, he will for sure get picked. And then the more I thought about it, I actually think it's very unlikely he will get picked, is Julian Gressel. Gressel makes a lot of money, is obviously a very good player, covers two positions really well, has been successful basically everywhere he plays. Gressel like requested to get traded back to the East Coast. He has a sick family member on the East Coast, is my what I think I've heard. Um, and so he doesn't want to live on the West Coast. And I would suspect San Diego would respect that, especially because I think his contract is up at the end of this year, and then it's like, well, he's just not going to come back to you. The more I think about it, the more I think the Brugman one is actually potentially interesting. Uh, I think
I
that's
think
like a
that makes
real.
sense.
I
He
think
like
that's a.
it's a lot of money, but he's
But it's
such a
only
good
one
midfielder.
year. It's only 1 year left, and like,
Mhm.
1 year, and he's
actually,
injury, and he's had injury problems the last year and a half.
I know, but you look at it and it's like, well, you have so much extra money in your
You
first
have
year.
five picks. You have five picks that are absolutely like you can get some bang on value here,
Well,
and
oh yeah,
you want to
okay.
risk.
So
You want to
Harrison,
risk it.
tell me then, who's the bang on? Give me your
So,
players then. Who's the bang on
all
pick?
right. So you want to really like, if you really want to go sicko, like, and you want to spend an international spot, like Gabriel Corbo from Montreal, right? Like Italian.
Ooh,
He's on a small salary, 200K, really good G plus and G minus numbers. I don't know why he was left unprotected, except for like maybe there's some sort of that he's not domestic and that they don't think that he'll take it, or maybe there's some sort of other like cash related issue on like a transfer fee that would be owed. I don't know, but it's super weird that he was left unprotected. He's 24, tons of ability to sell on later on down the road if he hits. Zach McGraw, Portland, SoCal. Took a step back in 24. 2023 was really solid, had a really good year. He's a potential starter or even a cheap backup, less than 200K, right? I I've kind of said this on Blue Sky earlier today. I'm not Kyle Hybert or John Bell type fan, right? For me, I would go with Josh Yarrow, different St. Louis guy, right? He has decent underlying numbers. He has a movement, and he's 100K. Like he has way better that numbers than anybody else coming from St. Louis. Like Jack Mayer, you have 700K, I think is what he makes like
Jack Mayer or
for
Jack
below
Elliott?
Jack Mayer. I don't
Oh,
even know
Nashville Jack
how.
Mayer.
So Jack Elliott's an interesting case because his contract is was declined. So I
Yeah,
don't know. We kind of discussed this in Slack, and I don't know necessarily.
there's a lot of weird. There's a lot of if you pick them, you get priority rights to renegotiate their contract. Like there's some weird
But he has to, but then you would have to
tomfoolery.
come to an agreement before the reentry draft.
Yeah, and like
So,
there's some shenanigan. Like Jeremy Ibabise was a name that I was like I would totally take him,
oh yeah, for
but
sure.
Jibo's just a free agent. You could just sign him. So
Exactly, exactly. There are some names out here, but ultimately, you're kind of stuck in that MLS roster quandary of, well, how does that mechanism work? And do I really have the time to negotiate with them and to sell them on this venture and to get them for what it would at a cost that would allow me to build on other players, right? There are some value pieces still there on the board. I'm last two real fast. Last three. Ben Bender is really interesting. He's a little expensive at $200K.
I'm not a Ben Bender guy. Also, I think he's a GA contract, so I think that is cap exempt.
He okay. Well, there you go. But I mean, he got sent on loan at the end of last year. Charlotte obviously are really don't really have a lot of plans for him. He'd be somebody that's like an eight-ish player that is interesting. His underlying numbers, especially when he was in Tampa, were really good. Daniel Reyes, dude continues to score everywhere he goes. Question is just whether or not his body will hold up. Uh, he's on less than 150K. He is on loan from Chivas Guadalajara, but I mean, still really an interesting guy, especially with that Chivas connection. San Diego, it's right there. And then lastly, you mentioned him to start. Stefan Cleveland was not secured. He's, if nothing else, an experienced backup for less than 200K.
Uh, I the two names who stood out to me is like I would 100% take this player. The three because I think there's three and they have enough resources they would cover it. I would take Brugman. I would take Leo Afonso from Miami, who like we have espoused the praises of. He costs you
Yeah.
literally nothing, and he's clearly good enough to play in MLS. Like having a guy who can play all three attacking positions and the 10, like whatever, sure. And he's super cheap and like who cares? And then Thiago Martins from NYCFC has been like consistently very good. Yes, he's a designated player, but I think you would find it difficult to find, and maybe they just don't want to have a DP center back. They already have Patty McNair, but like Patty McNair and Thiago Martins is like a legit super good center back pairing to start a franchise with. Ben, last thoughts on this one before we wrap it up.
I got one more, and it really depends on what the 2025 option is, but Jack Elliott. I think
Yeah,
he would
that's
make sense. Like just get a center back in. Don't overthink it. MLS experience. I feel like messing with center backs is a recipe for disasters with expansion clubs. I think that would make sense.
yeah. I think Harrison. I think you may be right about the domestic backup goalkeeper as well. Like that's been a really popular one. I would also
Hmm.
bet you some of these picks get traded. There's enough like weird players here that people might really like that they
Yep.
don't want the contract of that other teams would.
And that's the thing is you
Uh,
talk to the teams, they'll overvalue someone from whatever numbers that they have, or like, value them more than San Diego would. And so it's easy for San Diego to say like, oh, well, I'll just take what you'd give me for that player
for
over
sure, for
any of
sure.
these specific picks if, we already have players in mind in our Right to Dream network or these signings or whatever.
Yeah.
So
A GM once told me that like their favorite part of the expansion draft wasn't the expansion draft, that it was every team doing a public these players are available for trade. post and that like now you can call these teams and be like, hey, so you didn't protect Deshaun Jones. Like if we wanted him, what would the price be? And it greases the wheels on a lot of really easy conversations. Anyways, that's gonna be all from us today. Uh, that's the end of the MLS season, and it's pretty delightful. It's pretty delightful. We hope you enjoyed it. There's going to be another episode later this week with our like end of season wrap up non MLS Cup stuff. But this is the expansion draft. This is MLS Cup. We don't want to give you a crazy long episode. So we'll cut it there. Mm, Kieran and Post. Not going to cut it there. We're just going to do a mega episode. Crazy stuff happened. We put this out later. The second half of this later out in the week. It's going to be out of date. So enjoy the second half of this episode. Well, listen, the MLS season is over. We talked MLS Cup and the expansion draft totally not an hour ago. And there were some loose ends for the season we wanted to tie up. We wanted to do some ASA specific awards, not just like G plus and XG later. By the way, I ran into Ricky Puig in the locker room after MLS Cup, and I told him that we voted him for MVP and that he had the most G plus in the league, and he said, "Sounds cool, man," and walked away. And so that was quite funny. He definitely did not know what a G plus was, um, but it was pretty funny.
He should
And
be
he
more
he
online. Maybe he'll learn.
he literally ran away. Like he ran to the press officer to be like, "Get this fucking weird guy away from me."
Nerds.
So it was pretty funny. But we've got some awards, and then we've got some like potpourri of random things that have happened in the league this week, and we'll touch on those as they happen, and inevitably things will happen that will make this all out of date by the time it comes out, and that is what it is. But we'll start, Ben, with your award. Give me a weird, unique MLS end of season award.
So I did some number crunching for two awards. Started with one award and then I realized there's an inverse of it. So I'd like to give you my main nominations for Mr. Reliable. And I'm defining Mr. Reliable as the players that are gonna give you an above average for their position performance in G plus most games out of the season. You know, you're not gonna bounce around. You're gonna you know what you're gonna get from them, and it's probably gonna be good. So if we're going by percentage of people who had at least 10 halves, so you're playing 45 minutes or more 10 times in the season. Mr. Reliable is Ricky Puig, who got 25 out of 28 matches, positive, of course.
Nice.
On the lower end side, we've got Kevin Arriaga, a Curvin. My gosh, all right. It's Arriaga with 10 out of 11. And we've also got Hector Herrera, who is like 16 out of 19. So those are your reliables. I was actually a little surprised by this. Not many people are
I
cracking over like less than 10 people do are positive 80% of the time last season for these starts.
that's
That's very surprising to me. So you're gonna even you could be great. You're gonna have some stinky games,
Wait,
folks.
less than 10 players had 80% of their halves as positive G plus.
Not no 80% of their games where they played at
Still,
least
that's
45 minutes. Yeah.
that's
It
surprising.
surprised me for sure. Like
Ri-
Thiago Amada's on here, 12 out of 15.
I would have expected Ricky Puig to be more up and down too. Who else is on? Hold on, give me the whole list then. Who else is on there?
Oh, I mean, it's a whole bunch. So if we're looking at 80% but and above, it's Cucho Hernandez, Thiago Almada, Ali Ahmed, Leo Messi, Hector Herrera, Carlos Terran, Ricky Puig, and Kevin Arriaga.
I
Kevin
really like
Arriaga.
Carlos Theron and I really like Ali Ahmed. That's very cool that those guys popped like that.
Hmm.
Ali Ahmed is like super reliable, like lunch pail guy. I actually love that. That's a really
Hmm.
cool award.
And someone that we talked about recently as well, who just barely got under point 0.8 at 0.793 is Jonathan Rodriguez from Portland. So Harrison,
Oh,
you're onto
that's your
something
boy.
there.
Kervin Arriaga was like sneaky good for Minnesota. But then I think he got transferred, right? He plays for like
Yeah.
Partizan Belgrade or
Yeah,
something
no,
now.
this must have been like his first
His
half of the year or
first couple
something.
games or whatever.
Yeah.
That's fun.
All right,
Uh,
but then on the flip side, we've got Mr. Unreliable,
oh,
which is the inverse. So I'm looking at players who had, 10 games with 45 minutes or more
of bad
um,
halves?
of bad halves.
Interesting.
And 24 out of 24 games turning in a negative G plus on average is Carlos Grazo.
Oh no. Oh no.
It seems to be the category for big name defensive midfielders because we've also got Kellen Acosta and Darlington Nagbe on here. So
Oh wow. Yeah, Darley Nags, by the way, had like the second lowest G plus in the whole league this year. Like
yeah,
absolutely nuked.
yeah.
He that's fun. Harrison, you are not a Carlos Gruezo guy, right?
No, I really wanted to believe it. It's funny that you say that because I looked him up today because I saw that he was exposed on the expansion draft list that we did not just talk about. And yeah, it made me realize how bad he really has been. Like I I know a lot of people wanted to believe in him, but I don't know. I struggle.
One
I'm
last
I I
before.
quite like Kellen Acosta though, which is funny. Like
Well,
I
this is one
think
of those things. I always thought he was decent
me
here in Colorado, and he never popped on G plus. So
Paul Harvey and I really disagree. Like I think he's a super useful like all rounder, and Paul's like this guy does nothing well.
No,
And like
I'm with Paul. Yeah.
maybe Paul is more right than I am here. Who else, Ben, is on this?
so
Are there more players on the bad list than the good list?
yes. Oh yeah. Well, so I mean, yeah, if you have to go to number 38 until you get below
Okay. All
80%
right.
of the games for
We're not
this one.
hearing 38 names, but who else
No.
stands out on this list?
So special place in my heart. Sorry, Lala Abubakar. 13 out of 15 games this year. Sorry.
MLS Ref Stats says said he hopes Lawless doesn't get taken because he feels too Colorado in his heart, which is so funny to me.
I know there's always that reputation of us
But
just being,
he's gone no matter
fouling at
what, right?
will. Yeah, no, they're not bringing him back, it seems, based on Bogart stuff. So
Nice. I'll share one of my awards and then Harrison will let you go and then I'll give my second one. Uh my award is the unluckiest player in the whole league. There were no statistical criteria for this other than I just opened the tables and like poked around until I found somebody who looked unique. So I will announce the award and then I will explain why. The unluckiest player in the whole league is Paxton Pomykal because Paxton Pomykal played 10 minutes. His G plus in those 10 minutes is the second worst per 96 G plus in the whole league. He's like minus three quarters of a goal per 90. It is horrific. It's one of the worst per 96 G pluses without a minutes cap of anyone ever. In those 10 minutes, he wrecked his knee so bad he needed season ending knee surgery. And it is truly so sad because I quite like Pax Pomkle. I think he's really good. So he is, in my opinion, the unluckiest player in the entirety of
let's be
MLS this year.
real. It's been Paxton Pomykal for 3 or 4 years running at this
It
point.
might have been. It might have been. Hey, you could be Surreal and get traded to the Galaxy. Harrison, hit me with one of your awards.
All right, so you guys got these nice little Mr. Dependable, and so my award is just freaking stop doing that award. Like I'm a baseball fan at heart, and so like I love big counting stats, and so this was to honor the most failed crosses inside the final third.
Can I guess who it is?
Yeah, go for it.
Because I'm gonna guess who it is because they all are probably also the most successful crosses in the final third. It's Christian Espinoza.
It is. It is
Yeah.
absolutely Christian Espinosa. It
So
is. Stop doing that.
I'm gonna. That's amazing. I'm gonna rant on this because I think Christian Espinoza is so good at crossing that he makes crossing a worthwhile endeavor. Jamin and I had an amazing conversation about this because Christian Espinoza, since he joined the league, like leads the league in XA, like he's cracked. And
Yes.
it's all just him spamming crosses, both sides of the field, both feet, doesn't matter. The guy just
Correct.
whips it. He is like Trent Alexander Arnold, but a winger in MLS. And I really like Christian Espinosa. He's like one of my favorite players in MLS. So
He is the only person.
keep crossing it, Christian.
I think it's absolutely ridiculous that he has the most and not by a small margin. Like
Oh, it's probably like
it's
a
it's
hundred.
it's not that high. It's Espinoza, Kai Wagner, and then Brooks Lennon, and then Martin Oja. it's like 239, 190, 160, 140, and then it just like starts like going down quickly. Like, so the amount that he's doing it is just unreal. I think the other side of it is that he also has had some decent target. I think Jeremy Ibobose is actually a pretty good target forward in the early, but I'm sure that's not necessarily who's pulling that down. So I just randomly assumed on the spot. So
Yeah, Jibo can get up with his like special concussion preventing headband. Can make him head the ball into the box. Harrison, do you have another one, or is
I
that
do. I
your?
have two more.
Okay, hit me with
Which
them.
I mean, we've already. So you guys gave nice awards, right? Like me, I just use this as a moment to be
Bring the
vindictive,
hate. I love it.
and to further my causes. So really, I don't feel negatively towards this actually, but I thought it's a funny thing. It's something that I like to watch specifically, and that's nice, but maybe pick another tool award. And that goes to Ricky Puig, who had the most shots outside of the 18-yard box this season with 69.
Nice. I love that. That's a great one. Who was anybody else interesting around him?
There was, I'd have to pull it up.
That's okay. I'm not shocked that he is number one on that particular metric. I
If you
imagine
have the
somebody.
ball all the time, I guess you're just
Oh
gonna get
yeah.
tired and let it rip whenever it
Oh
comes back.
yes. Evander was second on that.
Two MVP. I mean, if you want to win
Well,
MVP,
you know,
folks,
one
take
MVP,
long shots.
one
Correlation is
MVP,
causation.
yeah, one MVP nominee, not
Uh,
two.
Cucho Hernandez is two or is three.
Yeah, maybe there is. Yeah, MLS voters like bangers. That's the takeaway here.
That is 100% that. That's what I would be. Yes, I think that's Bouanga's seventh on that list. So yeah, I think it's fair.
Hit us with your third award, Harrison.
Third one, the last and not least is you gotta be shitting me again. Award to Andy Vasiliev, who lost almost 9% of all of his possessions. So
He turned over 9% of all of his
of his
possessions.
of all of his forward possessions. Yeah,
That feels very high.
yeah. It might have been his
That's
carry. It might have been his
that's
carry.
that's that's
So,
that's I would be fuming.
so
Uh
it just made me laugh how many he got how frequently he got dispossessed. Um,
oh,
one
it's
one
just dispossessions. It's not even failed. Oh, that's a lot.
Yeah,
Most
it's a
MVP.
crazy amount. Like I think now I will say I looked specifically at people that had over 500 carries and had like X amount of possessions lost and dispossessions. I only looked at certain cutoffs, so it wasn't. But his was up over I think like 2% higher or 3% higher than the next person. So it was a lot. It was a lot, and it made me laugh. So I can just see like a St. Louis fan just like being like, "Indy's got the ball again, crap," you know, just
He
being
he
angry, drinking like Bud Light in their
he
whole.
he has the coolest name though. Indiana Vasilev is such a sick name.
It is, yeah. So I
Speak
like what I watched a video of him recently, and.
Another expansion draft pick, by the way. Just throwing that out there.
Absolutely. And it's funny that the video was him talking about the expansion draft, which is one of the reasons why I watched it. I don't know. I came away liking him less. I'll just leave it at that.
Ouch. Ouch. Speaking of fans getting mad, when in the press box, I was sat next to like some Associated Press guy, and then next to him was like a Red Bull blogger. And when uh when they made the subs like in the 80th minute or whatever to bring Elias Manuel on, and somebody else came on. I can't remember who it was. Wilker Carmona. This Red Bull fan threw his hat at the ground and was like, "God damn it!" and and I sent that this happened in our Slack, and when I saw Tyler, he's like, "It's so funny because I did the exact same thing," and I thought that was pretty good. I thought that was great. My last award is Mr. Irrelevant. Normally, Mr. Irrelevant in the draft is the last pick of the whole draft. Here, it's the player who did the least to impact a game, negatively or positively. There are 8 players whose G plus averages to 0.00 above average. They're just like the most average do nothing guy. 7 of them are really low minutes guys. The eighth played almost every single minute. Ben, you are intimately familiar with this man. It's Andreas Maxu, who has an exactly 0.00 G
You
plus.
know what's even funnier? Because I did this like, how many games do you have? He played all 34 games at least 20 minutes, 17 positive, 17 negative.
See, he's the most average guy to ever. What was very interesting was it wasn't that his like totals for the categories were close to zero. It was that they just all added to zero. He was like
That's
big up and
just so
downs.
amazing. That is so amazing.
He's a
That's a
shooting and interrupting guy because he's tall.
Yeah, Maxu giveth and Maxu taketh away. And or is that all your awards? Is that can we move on to the potpourri? Let's move on to the potpourri. There's some strange things that have happened. A lot of Colorado centric things. So Ben, we'll start there, and we won't spend too long. The Rapids traded for Awazim and Ian Murphy. I am not. I'm very sorry to the people of Nigeria, but we're just gonna go with Awazim and Ian Murphy, 2 center backs from FC Cincinnati. Awazim's a TAM level player. Ian Murphy is very cheap. They also picked up all the next 3 years of Philadelphia Union picks for 350K in GAM, rising to 600K in escalators. I assume based on where the picks in the future follow up. One of those picks is the eighth pick in this draft. The Rapids have drafted really well. Ben, you as our resident Rapids expert, where are you at on these moves?
I think it's interesting. I mean, I think it's just a wholesale change at center back, which is I'm excited about that. I don't think I was excited about any of the center backs on our roster apart from Bombito. So terrific stuff. The draft stuff is really interesting because, the Rapids have this reputation for being very analytically driven, but my sense is they probably don't sink the time into doing numbers for NCAA. Like they're going to be looking at the global market to get the real value from more reliable numbers than counting stats from, you know, Big East and ACC and stuff like that. So they're putting a lot of trust in the scouting department and in Brian Crookam's hands, who's the general manager of Rapids 2, who I assume is going to have a lot of the power to actually be making these picks in the draft, and to sort of be leading that process. So there's going to be, over the last couple of years, the FO has been very focused on making sure to be getting prospects. Some of the prospects pan out, and if they don't within 2 years, they've usually been moved on. Not even to Rapids to like onto another MLS or USL team. So it's very much like it feels like this is building Rapids too. It like use the academy, use the college system, send some of these players back to college once you draft them. Now that that's an option, I think it's going to be giving that group a lot more flexibility. I think the starting core is pretty set for the next few years, so you're going to have a few opportunities to break in. So I wouldn't expect any big moves or like earth-shattering decisions, but this shows that there's going to be real effort and planning into connecting Rapids 2 to Rapids 1 and sort of creating a culture between those two.
This feels like when you go to the casino and you win like a big bet or something, and then you take out the profits and you put a bunch back into playing that game more to see if your luck is still good with the Bombito sale.
Oh yes.
You got 10 million, you took your 9 million home to do whatever you want. You're like, we can put 500K into more draft picks. Let's see what happens. And I think like the Union the eighth pick this year, like so what we see generally is like top 5 picks go from like 150 to like 400K depending where the pick is. I assume the escalators are based on where they are. The later round picks have essentially zero value. Uh, like I think it's whatever, maybe a little bit pricey for the gamble, but like if the Unions stink again, or not stink, but just are worse next year or the year after, like, sure, you've paid on average 150K for like picks 8, 12, and 10 or something like that.
But another thing I think is interesting here is not only like I always look forward to the draft, not to see who we pick, but just to see like what happens round to round or like, pick to pick. Because the Rapids usually active. They're usually trading in the middle of the draft. So now they've got a lot more ammo to move up, to move down, to be flexible. So they're going to be making the actual draft live experience a little interesting going forward, I think.
For sure, it gives you lots of opportunities to like even just to like throw them into trades as filler is like a reasonable thing. Next up in the MLS Potpourri, Harrison, San Jose. They hired Bruce Arena, who is spontaneously back from his mystery suspension that we don't know anything about. He traded for all his homeboys in Mark Anthony K, Dave Romney, and Ian Harkes for I don't know, like 500,000 or 600,000 in GAM, something like that. Mark Anthony K still makes a gargantuan amount of money. And most interestingly, San Jose are really trying for Brandon Vasquez to bring him back from Monterey. Harrison, what do you think about San Jose?
First of all, Bruce Arena hasn't done anything wrong ever, and I love him for it. Um, as far as like this smattering of, I guess, trying to raise, I guess, kind of raise the water level of the team itself. Um, it is what it is. I mean, Dave Romney's Dave Romney. I mean, he kind of had a couple of seasons to where had some breakout moments, and then he just kind of regressed back to, oh, this is Dave Romney, and just is what it is. He's not great. He's probably going to get you 2,000 minutes of slightly average defense, which I mean, it's probably better than what they had on the bench right now. Mark Anthony K, like I don't know, man. Does that dude have legs still? Like maybe they're making some movements and bionics or something.
Ma-
I don't know.
Mark Anthony Gay and Jackson Newell would be the slowest midfield in MLS.
Oh, it's crazy, dude.
Listen,
Like
listen, it couldn't be worse than last year. Last year was they were so far and away the worst team in the league. Like it couldn't be worse. So, as much as our beloved friends at the Aftershock and whatever, speaking of Aftershock, we had an earthquake this week. The people at the Aftershock would love to be a modern data-driven organization making good recruitment decisions. It literally couldn't be worse. So let's see how that one goes. Moving on, the next one I think is the one we're going to spend the most time on, which is why I'm trying to ushering us along. Tommy Scoops. Oh, actually, the other San Jose thing. I ran into Omar Gonzalez outside the stadium, and I said, "So you and Bruce getting the band back together?" And he just laughed and said, "I don't know what's on. I don't know what's up next for me." But that was pretty funny. Uh, Tommy Scoops said the league is trying to implement a cash basis transfer system for internal transfers. So instead of having to trade GAM, you can just pay a transfer fee. We have seen this be a real issue in MLS the last couple of years. Eric Williamson was dangled by Portland window after window after window for a big GAM payout that nobody was giving them the amount of GAM they wanted, but people probably would have paid the transfer fee for. We saw the same thing with Chicho Arango, where LAFC basically tried to trade him to every single team in the league for a league record fee in GAM. Didn't happen. They sell him to Mexico, immediately comes back into the league for basically the same transfer fees at like $5 million or something ridiculous. We saw the same thing with Paul Areola. We've seen the same thing with Lewis Morgan. We've seen the same thing with a bunch of these guys who like it has been very difficult to find trades at the GAM that people want, but now you can pay a transfer fee. Benjamin, do you like this? Yes or no?
Yes. I'm even more confused now. Like we just keep adding rules. It just is a little frustrating that we still have more rules instead of fewer rules. But I think it's a good thing because I think intra-league movement remains an issue. Like don't I still like how like the intra-league loan initiative has been a thing for so long now. Like the trivia question everyone knows now is it's Tony Cassio, Rapids legend, who was the first loaned player within the league. I mean, that was like 2014. It's been a decade. Has that rule played any sort of relevance within the league? Like I'm
We
interested to see what
see
happens
we
with
see like one intra-league loan a year generally.
and they're never consequential. They're usually players that might be getting like so the one I'm now thinking of is Danny Leva coming to the Rapids in
Yeah.
2022,
Yeah.
where he's on the upswing. He's getting more minutes with Seattle now, but he just needs some minutes. And I guess they thought that Robin's style was a good fit for him. And then he goes back after playing 700 wasted minutes for us. Like I rolled my eyes every time he played because I didn't think he was that good, and I just know he's going to go back to Seattle. So structurally, I guess it makes sense why it doesn't happen a lot. So you know, I hope this jumbles that up. I hope we see small big. I hope we see small fees. I hope we see large fees. I hope this lets the deals that were very close that would have been good for teams and players that hadn't happened before happen. And I hope it improves the league, but I think it's a good thing. I'm just getting confused.
Harrison, pro or against?
I think it's pro because it kind of what Ben just said, right? I think it's going to open up movement, and I think it's going to give players a little bit more agency. I mean, I know that this is going to be for teams specifically, but it helps them negotiate opportunities, right? We talked about Julian Gressel, moving from the West Coast to the East Coast due to hardship. I'm sure Vancouver had to take a little bit of a bath on what they could have gotten back, right? So I think that it just helps. It helps teams get a little bit creative. Now, the opposite side of it is that this potentially prices out some of the teams that don't have that cash available, right? The league is going to start growing to a point of the haves and the have-nots to a degree. You're going to have teams that just have more flexibility. New York City, Miami, LAFC, LA Galaxy. These teams just are going to have a little bit more money to play with and have a little bit more flexibility to go and make decisions. Um, how does that change the teams? Because for every time that you have a team like that, you also have a team that has to kind of work around the system. And we get some creative people. And I feel like that gives the opportunity for teams that are going just basically to sell players and say, hey, you think you're smarter than me? I'll sell you this player and see how much you'll give me for him. Um, it could open up some interesting deals.
Yeah, I think the ability to make more transactions is always valuable. And we actually got a really good shout on Discord, on the patron Discord, about perhaps this opens up more moves for like U22s that teams want to move, where like if you think about the Georgi Mihailovic move in Montreal, instead of instead of Chicago selling him to Europe now for $1 million, they can sell him to Montreal for $1.5 million and a sell on instead of Montreal having to trade 800K in GAM and the sell on being included there. So I wonder if that is like a potential avenue that is really interesting. And I think there is room for that. And I think the thing that I get caught up on is you really have to avoid a GAM USD exchange rate. Like you really cannot have trades that have GAM and money in the same trade because that I think is a very slippery slope to as much as like sicko me wants to see like LA Galaxy buy GAM off of FC Dallas because they're cheap. I think that's a very slippery slope to like bad competitive implications. But I think like being able to buy players and then the associated transfer fee is added to their cap hit as amortization, I think is valuable. There's perhaps an interesting conversation about whether this means you have to renegotiate a new contract like you do every other transfer in the world, or if because it's MLS, it's the same contract. I don't know. We'll see. But that's I think the summation of my thoughts on that one. Any other thoughts from you guys before we move on? Shoot, Ben.
So this raises a question for me of is the barrier to selling players has always been the difference in MLS valuing MLS players versus the rest of the world valuing MLS players. And we're about to we're not going to have a GAM to USD exchange rate, but we might have a is a 2 million player in France worth 4 million players in MLS type of exchange rate. So that'll be interesting to keep an eye on.
Yeah, it's very true. There is going to be weird financial implications to buying intra-league players versus selling them outside of the league. But I think those things happen in all leagues, right? Like we used to see the top four in the Premier League never sold to each other. That was a pretty common thing. Moving on, Facu Torres leaving Orlando off to Palmeiras. I don't think we need many thoughts on this because we are all in agreement. Selling high on a very hot finishing season for a guy who never really put up like the biggest underlying numbers to really justify what he was like 14 goals, 3 assists from only 9 expected goals and expected assists in 2,700 minutes. Like, it's just not great. Finish is hot, but it is what it is. I think this one's fine to move on from. Yay or nay? I see a yay from Ben. Harrison, yay or nay?
I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm still formulating thoughts on it.
Are you leaning either direction as he
No.
physically leans? This is an audio
No.
medium.
No, I don't think so. I really don't have any thoughts, man.
Okay. Well, moving on from that one, Aaron Long back to LAFC, new contract, 3-year deal. Ben, like it or dislike it?
Fine. I'm okay with erring on the side of keeping center backs for reasonable money if they haven't made egregious mistakes. So it's fine.
Harrison, yay or nay?
I don't like that.
I also don't like it. Why do you not like it, Harrison?
Think it's an overpay
We don't know
for
the number. We don't know the number.
I agree that we don't know the number. I still think it's an overpay.
This is my thing is that like he's 32, it's his last real contract, and
Yeah.
he was making huge money before, and
He
has
didn't get you didn't get him at a discount. You didn't get him
no,
at
certainly not, and he just hasn't been that good. Like I don't think
he
I
hasn't
didn't
been 20 he hasn't been like 2020 or 2019 version of himself.
I didn't like the free agent get in the first place. It just to me is a little squeaky. And the age profile and like to me this leans into them playing conservative again, which I think is objectively bad for them. But here we are. Uh Mini trade Thomas Angel, LAFC to San Diego. That's the son of Juan Pablo Angel. Basically has done nothing. We don't have to talk about it more. I just thought it was funny that that deal happened. Uh, Jesse Zardes bought out by Austin. Who could have forever seen that signing going poorly? You think anybody picks him up, Harrison?
Yeah, absolutely.
On like Kai Kamara league minimum floater deal or like real money?
You know what I think? I think that he's going to get some amount of money out of San Jose. I
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, he's
He's gonna
already
go to
getting his money, right? Like it's just a matter of how much does another team
correct.
want to pick up and do they want to
Correct.
well, I
outbid other
mean,
teams?
Well,
he's
Bruce
yeah.
famously has no qualms about paying part of the salary of bought out TAM strikers that used to play for him.
It's
He went
historical.
with Josie Altidore from TFC to the Revs, who then immediately did nothing for 3 years, and then he extended him on max TAM. What a dummy!
I don't think why would he do that if he's trying to get Brendan Vasquez though?
Yeah, that's true. Who knows? He won.
Here.
And
You want to
Giga
know my
Bisa.
theory? I know we're a professional organization and we don't speculate, like some people would. But I think San Jose reaching out to Brandon Vasquez lit up the sky, and there's a lot of MLS teams that's just said, "Oh, hey, we can afford Brandon Vasquez
Yeah.
because if San Jose can talk with him, we certainly can."
Yeah,
That's what
I wonder about that one. I
I
wonder
don't
if
think
that's
that's
just like a, we're ambitious.
you know
uh
what, we say that, and then Jamin's gonna listen to this, and then he's immediately gonna text me and be like, "You're wrong," or "What do you know?" That is, so it's gonna be something. It's gonna be one way or the other. Just wait for
my
it.
my Zarda's prediction is he goes to Columbus to fill the Christian Ramirez backup striker spot and scores a boatload of goals for them. That's my prediction. And
That makes sense.
the last one, Alvaro Barrial is didn't get his purchase option picked up by Cruzeiro. In theory, is returning to FC Cincinnati. Um, in a press conference this week, they were like, "Well, nothing's off the table, but we don't expect it." Does he stay in MLS or is he sold elsewhere, Ben?
I think someone else should pay a transfer fee to keep him in MLS. Pew pew.
That's
Synergy.
actually, I think he's a very good money transfer candidate. Actually, Harrison, stay in MLS or does he go?
Dude, I just loved the answer. I love that answer because it was like such wiggle worm, like, oh my God, we don't want him back. Like
Oh my God, yeah.
without losing trying to
Well,
lose any of your without trying to lose any of your bargaining leverage, which you already lost with them declining it. It
it's a
just
fire sale for defenders at Cincinnati right now because they had to
Hey,
load
hey,
up.
he says he's not a defender. This is part of the problem. I
Hmm.
said in the Patriot Discord that Seattle should gaslight him and say he's playing as a winger and be like, yeah, you're playing as a winger, Alvaro, but you really have to track back. Our wingers really track back like all the way, like almost see Nuhu like next to him, follow all the way to there. And I know it's a lot of work for a winger, but like our wingers, we really like when our wingers, only the wingers, and every lineup graphic is a 4-3-3, and you don't let anyone say the word wingback, and you tell Alex Roldan he's playing wingback, but he can't tell Barrial that he's playing wingback, and you see how long you can survive because he's so good and he would be so good for Seattle. And you go back three all the time, and you just see how long you can get away with him being like, "You're a winger." I know we defend so deep, don't we? I know, but you're a winger, and you go from there.
here's the thing. It's that there are people in Seattle right now. This is the funniest. This is one of the funniest things. I never knew I needed this type of like MLS like storytelling. Like if you can just write this up like for me, like in an actual conversation between Brian Schmetzer, and I need Brian Schmetzer's voice in that as he's explaining it.
It was
That would
it,
make it. But there are people that would be like, you know what? Flip him instead of Alex Roldan, and then put Reed Whiting Baker on the left, and just have them do that.
the
No,
dangerous Doyle would have Schmetzer on an interview and ask him like, "Oh yeah, so you've really got Barrio playing like a wing back," and
what
then
are you
it
talking
just
about,
ruined the
wing
whole
back? No, no,
it
Doyle,
just
you're
ruins
an
the whole
idiot.
thing.
He's a winger. No, I do think there's like there would probably be interest in MLS. Even as a winger, I think there would probably be an interest in MLS, but I would suspect that he finds his way to like Mexico or something. You don't want that character in your locker room, I don't think. Anyways, that's it from the MLS Potpourri. We're gonna call it there. Uh Kieran in post, back again. About 15 minutes after we finished recording, we got a very lovely report from Sounder at Heart, the Sounders blog. I guess it's a blog. Sounders in advanced talks to acquire Jesus Ferreira. Trade apparently hinges on Sounders' ability to get Ferreira to agree to a contract extension. And I am a top 1% Ferreira lover. I think this guy is such a smart player. I think he is so clever. I think his ability to play multiple positions in the attacking band, whether as a nine, a winger, a 10, is extremely valuable to roster construction. I think when you pair him with someone like Jordan Morris, who is much more of a depth threatener, whereas Ferreira is a peel off the front line and connect things passer guy, I think that's a very natural match. And I think if you're talking about how a deal like this would fit in Seattle, it's it's pretty easy to do. If you're playing as a pair, it's a very natural pair. If you're playing as a 9 and a 10, that's an option. You can do things like play Morris as a wide forward and Ferreira as like a false nine. If you think Pedro de la Vega is a shot getting guy, like that's an option for you. And I think there's a lot of different things you can do with that. Even if you wanted to get real aggressive with 4-3-3s and play Ferreira as an eight with Rusnak, or however you want to get there. You want to do a diamond. You want to. There's so many things you can do. I personally think 3-5-2 is really interesting, and you play Giorgio de la Vega as like a really aggressive wingback. I think there's a lot of really creative things Brian Schmetzer can do to do that. And I think Ferreira is a good buy low bet based on where he has been the last couple of years. Uh, if you look at things like his net G plus year over year, Akshay, who's in our patron Discord, uh, has his lovely app that he's been working on Dribbly, and you can see kind of the net G plus year over year, and it's pretty up and down, but particularly post Gold Cup, he's flattened out a lot closer to zero, and post the 2019 Gold Cup, that is. And he's had a lot of injury issues. He's not a guy who's been a huge minutes guy the last 2 years, but I think Dallas have been so behind the eight ball in terms of doing anything as a team that this change of scenery to go to a much better team who are able to have much more of the ball without unsettling themselves, I think this is a pretty good fit. And I think this is a very interesting deal to pull off mechanistically in terms of, well, Ferreira was going to move to Russia for like a huge fee. Is that now a big GAM trade? Is this one of the first cash deals we see based on the cash basis stuff we talked about? There's a few different options on that front, and I'm very curious to see if a deal gets done. This feels far enough away. I'm surprised it's coming out now. But let's see. I think this is one we quite like. Netchi Plus doesn't like him because he's usually a forward and he doesn't do the receiving thing because he's always deeper and linking. But I think this is good player, good team, good fit, and it's pretty hard to be mad at those. This is the last pod you will hear from us for a little while, until after the holidays at least. And then we got some plans. We got some people going to come on. We're going to talk about some bigger picture stuff. It's going to be a fun time. And now, especially more than ever, because it is the off season, all of our social medias are available. You can follow us at Analysis Evolved, or I think it's AmericanSoccerAnalysis.com on Blue Sky. You can see the website. If you want to hear things or see things on the website, now is the time to reach us and be like, you, I hated that, or you, bring the Wheel of Fandom back. Lots of options. But now is definitely the time. And just wrapping up, this was a really, really great year for ASA. I think the women's side coverage blew up with Evan and Eric. That was super cool. I saw Evan in LA again, which was pretty cool. And they had Haley Carter on, the GM, an active GM in the league, on the pod of the championship team. Like there was, imagine we got Will Kuntz on the pod. Imagine right now I was like, and now here's Will Kuntz. That'd be crazy. So that was super sick. Again, the previews are good. The research is there. There's some fun stuff going on. I'm cajoling Ben to help me with my limited programming skills. So there's fun stuff coming, and there was Elliot put out his article this week with the substitution stuff, which I think is one of my favorite ASA articles we've ever put out. It's been a really great year, and it's been a really great year because of the people supporting us in the Patreon Discord. If you want to be one of them, the coolest people around, there's one tier. It's $5 a month. I know I plug it on the pod. We don't plug it on socials that often, but it is very helpful to us to keep the lights on, to keep the servers on. I saw Tyler, who does a lot of our back end stuff. He looked a haggard man. He looked a haggard man, keeping everything, keeping the lights on. So support the website as best you can. Anyways, that's all from us. Ben, Harrison, thank you for all your help this year. And as always, folks, enjoy the soccer.